Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland, wherever you are. And here it is, the afternoon. I haven't been able to do shows late for lack of funding and support, but I'm still into it because I do this show. One, you have to realize this is just for your entertainment's sake. Two, not just the entertainment of you, but the minions of aliens above who look at planet Earth as a reality show, right? And once, the ratings go down and the show gets canceled, that'll be the end, right? We will go into nothingness, right? And don't believe a word I say. I'm just here, because I love you guys. you know. So I was, before I go on, I kind of take a look at everything and of what's on the internet. I have this stream of people who send me stuff. Take a look at this. What do you think of that? Blah, 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 blah. Right. And of course, everyone has their own opinion. And they think that opinion is real or truth or no, it's like everyone has an asshole. So everyone has an opinion, which doesn't transfer to being something of, you know, about almost anything. And, I get this, right? So anyway, I'm just going to keep going. So, you know, in the late 90s, early O's, as we, basically decided to, double down on neo-conservatism and take out the Middle East, um, you know, it was just a similar ploy that occurred when the Democrats um, basically took out Yugoslavia, right? And did event, from like I said, from Christopher Columbus coming to America, right? It's we are just revivifying the Roman Empire, the Reich. The first Roman Empire was the First Reich, second Holy Roman Empire, Second Reich. Um, Adolf Hitler's National Socialist, the Third Reich, right? And people don't, you know, connect that, right? And then you have to read Mein Kampf, and it says that the only way that you can reorganize the human condition is that you basically have to wipe out three-quarters of the human that's on this race, and you have to break every cultural moray, every cultural connection that gives people a feeling of who they are, right? And then substitute it with a very strict artificial motif that was basically spoken to very clearly in 1984 and Brave New World, right? Huxley's Brave New World, where no longer sex, everyone could have sex all they wanted, take as many drugs as they want. They could all be hippies as much as they wanted, as long as they did their job. And this TV show where people go to work and they don't know who they are at home, and then when they're at home, they have no idea what they're doing at work. I mean, that is like a trope that's being offered to the American public or the Western public or the planetary public. And you're going to see all of this occurring because things are happening so fast. Just, I don't know if any of you can remember what, 1991 was like. Come on. Can you remember? Is anyone saying anything? No, not really. Successfully connected. Okay, I'm glad I'm successfully connected. So once and that's what this war in Ukraine is about, because once all those people in the 1/5 of Ukraine say, "Oh, we're Russians, we're going to vote for it," and then the Ukrainians say, "No, you're not," and do a, like I said, it all what happens up in the south. And so then the Ukrainians will, I mean, the Russians will start using their, real missiles. Um, they have a lot. I mean, they're using up all of their tactical weapons. Their non-strategic weapons. Wait till they start using strategic weapons on the Ukraine, right? Where they can shoot a missile that's east of um, Moscow to blow up cities, and they have uh, things that could be non-nuclear that are almost as powerful as a nuclear weapon, right? They have these oh, they're called air blast. They are very exotic kind of explosive that basically, a quarter mile space, it just obliterates everything, and then everything another quarter mile, you'll have an effect, right? Lost maybe 40 to 80,000 dead, and the rest severely wounded, right? That have to go back to Russia and will never be the same. And so as soon as they start, and that was the thing that happened, they had to realize that Russia in these 7 months have had more casualties and more dead people than all of the 10 years they had in Afghanistan, right? So, and they are fighting a war that their army is designed to fight. In Ukraine, I mean, in Afghanistan, it was like more insurgent war, right? So, we have some real interesting things to observe, right? So, in the next 10 to 15 days, there's going to be this election. They're going to say all of this property is now Russia, and if you attack it, uh, you're going across the line, right? So, of course, the Ukraine's going to attack it because they already got armies in those places, right? So they got people there, right? So, um, I would say that by Christmas time, Russia will be using strategic weapons on the Ukraine, right? And the Europeans will, you know, elements of Europe are going to fray a little bit because places like Italy and France and Germany and Hungary and um, Sweden, their politics is kind of drastically changing, becoming very nationalistic, very con kind of folk, right? And in the United States, our legislatures are, whacking out, so we have no kind of political anything to depend on, right? In any of these places. So the stability of the political essence is it'll be interesting to see what happens. But conversely, in Russia, the same thing. And when things go south in Russia, they happen very quickly. So the question is, what's going to happen in Russia? And see, there are actual people who could take the reins of power that are even worse than Vlad, right? And this is why I'm saying all of this is kind of scripted, right? Because so much is going on at once, and everyone is doing the absolute worst in their ability to respond to the situation, right? Now you go, well, Ukraine's doing great. Look at this little guy, they're fighting back, blah, blah, blah. I would say that's only true because we give them the specific weapons and we trained for, they had about 8 years of experimental training on their little war on the Donbass border, right? And we had our best soldiering soldiers teaching this very tight 70,000 worth of guys how to do, and so this is a war that they were trained for, right? So they're responding quite good. And those guys are training every other man in the Ukraine how to fight this war. And it's been figured out how to utilize all those people. You don't take, it's not like Russia just grabbing a teenager, putting an AK in his hand, and putting him on the front line to die. No, they have these 70,000 guys well trained. They have another 70,000 behind them that who are in the military, have military experience, know how to, use their gun, da da da. And now those guys are training them to use their what experience they do have to sharpen it up to go online and go in on the line and go toe to toe with the Russians and take advantage, right? And that's why I think the Russians are made everything they do is virtually a mistake. And I mean, destroying all of the land that they got, killing everyone, putting people who have no training yeah, in these little towns. Of course, they're going to rape and pillage and etc. Right? That's you can. That's war. That's what happens. You see what the Nazis did when they had the big Russian, blitzkrieg. And basically, if you read, Mein Kampf, he basically, they did not do the strategic thing. They just tried to kill as many Russians as they could. Period. Yeah. Right. And if they had gone strategically, gone past the cities, right, and went to the oil refineries and the resources, and where the factories have been stuck behind the mountains, they'd gone there, which they could have done very easily. But they went to the big cities where it's hard to fight that kind of war, and they got chewed up there, right? Because the people were like, you know, doing what the Ukrainians do, protecting their homeland. And so, but if they had just blew past all, where the majority of the population was, where the cities were, gone to where the resources were and the food, and cut off the transportation of the food into the big cities, that would have been it. But he wanted to kill a lot of Russians. He did not do it military strategically, and thus that is exactly what Russia did when they came back down. But Russia had unlimited resources from us, so they didn't have to worry about producing weapons. And basically, Germany's best army just froze to death because their big blitzkrieg was spring, summer into fall, and they had no backup resources to spend the winter there. It's kind of what happened to Napoleon. So now, um, what we are going to see is a long, long, long war, years, which will basically destroy. This war is here to destroy not just Russia, but the EU, the United States, and China. Right? We're going to go into. We're going to see is these kind of wars like Ukraine break out. And China isn't going to invade Taiwan just yet. They're going to constantly say, "Oh, we're going to do it. We're going to do it," and keep this kind of bubble, right? And because it would be extremely costly for China to um, have a military, because the thing is that they're preparing for us to send in an aircraft carrier into the strait, and we're not going to do that. You'd have to be nuts to do that because they could just pick off the aircraft carrier group from the land, from land-based, anti-ship missiles, right? So They're not going to do that. They're going to be on the other side of Taiwan and have Taiwan's back and protect that side of Taiwan so more stuff can be brought in. And in the next year, they're going to, just by the political things we've done, we are going to start bringing in some of our best. They already have been war and anti-aircraft missiles and anti-ship missiles. And if we haven't already given them anti-ship submarines, we will, right? Because we have a bunch that are really good that have already kind of been mothballed. And Taiwan has a heavy duty industrial base. They can manufacture anything. And the other thing Taiwan is doing is moving its most valuable assets out of Taiwan and bringing them to the United States. And their best people, right? And they're leaving their most kick-ass people there who want to really go after China, and they're going to do the same kind of warfare that Ukraine is doing with Russia, right? Make it very expensive for China to go after, and it will. China's already economically painted itself in a corner. It's about to have an economic crash that no one can, and so everyone's saying, oh, the yuan is going to be the new dollar, and not really, you know, because of their, they are doing exactly what we did between 96 and 08, right? And they put all their eggs in the basket of real estate, and everyone has. One of the reasons why they had these lockdowns is to basically do three things. One, show the population of China, you better do what we say, or else you'll be in jail. And I mean, there were millions of people in their nice apartments, but had nothing to eat, nothing to watch. They could only watch their DVDs. Everything, every element of what their life was clocked down, right? Unless they were a poet or something, they were having a hard time. And guys, I would suggest you want to understand what happiness is. Read poetry and read poetry about grief. Right? And one a I listen to the one of the I have no media coming in. I have no internet. I have to drive. Closest internet is to drive 1 mile to my neighbor and park on his in his driveway and talk to you guys. Right? But this time of the year, he, has people here. So I can't be here when he's got people here. So, a good deal of the time when you don't hear from me because someone's staying here, I can't the other thing is, my next place to go is, I have no money for gasoline. My car needs some serious repair. Very easy. I want to send you some money. I'm glad you next month. So about 12 days. I'm not going anywhere. I got food. I bought 100 pounds of rice about a year ago, and I've been raised. You put it in a dry place, a coolish spot, no sunlight. That rice will last forever. So I haven't really touched that rice until now. So get a little cup and put in my rice cooker and have rice and beans, right? So, so it's been pretty good for my bod. I'm staying at about 197. I went to and my blood pressure and everything. My blood pressure is like 120 over 60, and so that's pretty good. My blood sugar is sticking around between 90 and 111. That's good. My other things, are good. Even though my body is kind of racked. So I saw my endocrinologist. So I have four doctors, I see, and 2 weeks ago I went and saw my bone doctor, and he's signing me up to get all kinds of braces for my knees and ankles because I have Charcot legs and oh, what's this stuff called? Basically diabetic legs, right? And so my bones in my ankles have kind of dissolved. Same in my knees. 50 years of being an electrician. You know, so but he can't believe I'm walking around. He looked at my when I first started going to him about 5 years ago. When those guys want to cut my legs off, he was the one doctor who said, "No, well, let's you got them now. Let's see what we can do to keep them." So I've done all the right things and my all of that stuff, and my legs. They used to be black. That's why they kind of wanted to cut them off. So you can do anything with conscious intent and conscious awareness, right? And so all of this craziness, so you look at the United States and, they're flying immigrants, from the place that they're supposed to stay so they can go to court. They fly them the other side of the country. And, they're just doing such mean and cruel and bad things, but not one side. But see, there is no difference between the Democrats and Republicans because they represent Hail Hydra. All of this stuff is Hail Hydra. Go watch the first three Captain American movies, right? And you'll get it. Stan Lee was pretty good at trying to lay down, hey, this is what's going on, kids, right? Marvel has done a pretty good job of telling us what is really is, right? And and that's one reason why I live out here in the beauty. So, back in 2021, basically 2020, when the 19 hit, all the people went crazy, and all the rich people ran and rented whatever they could out here. Jacked up, you could rent a nice house in this neck of the woods up until the COVID for about $800. 3 bedroom, nice house, right? It went from 800 to 2,400 in less than 3 months, right? And then all those places got sold, right? And then whatever pieces of property that could easily be developed, the mob came in, bought it up, put roads, made gated communities, and sold all those sites off. Just like in the neighborhood where I'm at, there are a couple of gated communities and places where you put boats that were were brought up and created in the latter 70s. People bought these sites sight unseen from California, Florida, Texas. And then when they got here, they realized the piece of property they had was like on a cliff. It's like, and with no view, like on a cliff on top of one of the taller hills or mountains. But nobody wanted it because it was muddy and gooky and yuck. And I just cleared out, 3/4 of an acre in the center, right at the bottom of the hollow where all the mud and gook was. Um, and all those trees were hardwood, so I sold them. So basically, the guy who is the tree guy, he basically was honest and said, these are worth a lot of money. So he did the tree taking down and taking everything away, basically for free, plus gave me about $8,000, which I then used to pay the excavator over a 3-year period to put everything I needed in there, right? A lot of French drains, and we built 4 paths to build houses on, and cleared out a good deal of the forest, not all of it. The big 2 acres around, and about 30 of them were hardwoods that I got some money out of, right? So that financed that, and I have amazing drainage because I'm on a hill, so the water goes down the hill. So I've put French drains everywhere. I've drainage ditches side of my front lawn. So so this so when I got here, 20 years ago, I mean this is a rainforest, right? So the first 3 or 4 or 5 years, it would rain, 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 and be a little sunny, rain, 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 be a little sunny, rain, 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 little, and that's what it. And then we had about 8 years of it just being sunny, right? But still enough rain to keep everything green and growing, right? And I'm on top. I'm about 3,800 feet, so I'm pretty high up there. And even though I'm in a holler of the Sawtooth Mountain Range, my little um, range is one of the higher ones. It's the one that kind of is the demarcation between where the accordion between the Appalachian Mountain Range and the Blue Ridge Mountain Range, right? And the highest mountain, the Blue Ridge, is Mount Mitchell at about almost 7,000 feet, and I'm about 3,200, 3,800 feet up, so I'm halfway. So I'm, still below that. And the Appalachian, I don't know what is the highest mountain, but they're pretty high too. And but they're a little wider. So they make up a lot of states. The Appalachian goes all the way down to Georgia, right? And geologically could say it goes all the way to Mississippi, but the mountains itself kind of stop around Georgia. So and go all the way up to Maine, right? And into Canada. So right in the middle of everything. And so the weather comes from the west, from California, the Pacific, straight across, affects everybody in between here and there, and then bumps into the mountains. Now I am further east. I'm about 180 miles east of where the mountain range that I'm in starts, from where the flatlands are. From and Tennessee is a big, long, thin, not thin, but narrow state. It goes from what almost would be the west, to the south, to the north. It is a very strange state. And on the east, where I'm at, of Tennessee, is there's Kentucky, and West Virginia, Virginia, and North Carolina, all within 100 miles of me, right? And I'm about 210 miles to Oak Ridge, which is kind of where they're the foothills, right? And then Nashville and those cities are kind of in the flatlands of uh, Tennessee. And I'm probably Nashville. Oh God, let's see. I would say I'm maybe 200 and plus miles from there. So I'm out in the middle of nowhere, right? And there's nothing but trees and water, right? So up until last year, up until 2020, from about 2006 to 2020, uh, our weather kind of changed to where we weren't as much a rainforest as we were. When the first 5 years, it was like being in Ireland. So the weather would come all the way to the west and would hit this mountain range that is my accordion or sawtooth mountain range, and it would bounce either to the north and kind of go up into upstate New York and Canada, or bounce to the south and go into North Carolina and the coast and go along the coast and hit New Jersey and New York, right? Like that big rainstorm that flooded lower Manhattan last year. It hit us, but it veered that away, about 100 miles from it. But, we were in a ring and it rained, but not like, getting the kind of rain New York got. And New York is going to get more of that. I would say, and that big storm happened September, October. What, people thought of the hurricane season of being end of August, September, early October, it's going to switch. It's going to be September, October, November, maybe even into December, where we'd have basically snowstorms that are hurricanes, right? And I would say we're going to experience that today, right? This year, right? We're going to have some serious, serious, the kind of weather event that just hit Puerto Rico is going to hit us. And, basically, Donald Trump, when he threw the role of, paper towels. This is all you get, a paper roll of paper towels. They basically spent $10 billion to allegedly fix the uh, Puerto Rico's electric system, and they gave it to a really corrupt entity, and then had it overseen by an even more corrupt entity that had no, the Congress put it in power, and so the people of Puerto Rico had nothing to say about it or do about it or any input. And all they did was patch, they took $10 billion, thank you very much, and spent a few hundred mil to just patch the system together rather than replacing it. What really Puerto Rico should have had is like wind put, turbines put every which way, because they got a lot of wind. They're an island out there in the Pacific, and instead of putting the pinwheels, they should have put the barrel generators, which are ones that can survive hurricanes. Pinwheels can't, right? But we have invested totally in the pinwheel technology rather than the barrel technology. The barrel wind generator is a barrel, right? About, you know, 4 stories high, and the vanes are all around the barrel, right? And so it has a single, uh, torque source, that goes around, right? And it goes straight into a generator. Whereas a pinwheel has to have, at 120 feet up in the air, a 20-ton generator or a lot of gearing to bring that mechanical energy to a generator, right? Whereas the other one, generator, can be in the ground and the barrel on top, and it spins around like this, right? And the vanes are all around the barrel. And when the wind gets to a point where it's going to do damage to the generator, the vanes are pulled in and the wind just goes around the barrel, right? And this is a very old, the Persians had them, the Dutch had them. The Dutch had sails at first, and they said, forget that, and went for the barrel one. So when I was at Cooper Union, we put little versions of this along 10th Street, because Cooper Union owned pretty much all of 10th Street, from the west side to the east side. And it was a diagonal street, and it was like a wind tunnel. And all of these buildings were very 19th century. So they all had ledges on every floor. So we put, you know, these little platforms on all of those ledges and put barrels generators that were maybe 5 feet high and 4 foot in diameter. And we could, each one of these things could turn out, you know, about a kilowatt of 1 to 20 kilowatts of power. And we had about 200 of them. And we were making as much electricity as the coal fired plant on 16th Street, the Con Ed plant on 16th Street on the East River, right? These little barrels were doing that, right? And we had photocells on the roof, and we created digital electric meters that, um, you know, when we were generating it, they weren't buying it from Con Ed. When the sun went down and the wind went down, we bought it from Con Ed. When we were generating more electricity than we were using, we were dumping it back into Con Ed's system. And it worked amazing. This is 1968, right? And it was amazing. And we super insulated these buildings, and then Jimmy Carter is impressed, and we brought him there, and that's how we got into Habitat, because most of these buildings we were using Habitat to be the contractor, and it was a great system. It worked amazingly well, right? And we housed, uh, in those 100 or so buildings, we housed maybe 50 nonprofit entities, about 60 businesses, and about 1,000 families, right? And we, and we, started our own credit union, and that financed everything. And that was the model I brought to OR, right? Um, and OR was Outstanding Renewal Enterprises over on the Lower East Side and the South Bronx and Red Hook and Williamsburg and a few other neighborhoods that were really red line destroyed neighborhoods, burnt to the ground, right? So between 1968 and 1988, we showed you could do it without any government involvement, that everyone did it themselves. You go to Lower East Side now, that's the outcome. It's like a gem of community investment because um, all those businesses, at least in 2011, when I went back to see, because I don't know what it is now. Now it's like 11 years later. It could be corporate world beyond belief. Who knows? But it was a thriving thing, and all the businesses came from our credit union that we started there. And everyone owned their own home, owned their own business, made enough money to send their kids to college, and that's the American dream. What we have now is the American nightmare. And here I am out in the middle of nowhere, and the 4,000 or so Holler families that are left. When I got here, there were 19,000 of them. Now there's only 4,000. The average income of they were all truck farmers. They were making in the year 1974, I think it was. They were making 28,000 each of these families. Truck farmers. There's no truck farmers. Bear and Monsanto came in and fronted this thing called MAGA mead, and they turned it into a monoculture. It was unbelievable. It was like Garden of Eden. This was the bean capital of the universe and everything else, and Del Monte and all of those guys, the frozen food guys, had their factories here, and they bought all the vegetables because they're great vegetables from the truck guys and froze them and then sent them out to the rest. None of that happened. And so were people. And that's when meth really took over. 1978 is when meth really took over, and crime kind of came in, and then crack came in, and then in the 90s, OxyContin came in, and now it's fentanyl. So now between 76, um, thank you, Jimmy Carter, and now we went from 19,000 families to about 3,200 families. From a family income of about 28,000 in 1974 to today a income of 3,000 a year. So, and all of that is good. The state of Tennessee, they did not join the expansion of Medicare, and they didn't, go for any of the federal programs that could have helped these people. They said no. Anyone that helped really rich people, they said no. Right? So, what's the difference between here and the Ukraine? Not much. The outcome is the same. So, how can you be happy? How can you be happy is to offer your service. Every person I meet, I'm there to listen. I'm there to talk. I'm there to give advice. Just like I do on this show. And so I've been in this neck of the woods, between Kingsport, Tennessee, to Johnson City, Tennessee, to Boone, North Carolina. Kind of and that's 200 square miles. Okay? I have involved myself in constant things. People want to me run out shop, not people. Number of churches and schools, and I go and contact them. Most people say, "Oh, when do you get to a job?" And I get back to basically school systems. There's five different school districts, five counties in the United States, and basically they're all controlling was, why do we have a constitution? Anyone out there know why we have a constitution? Well, no one's watching, so but you can't, you know, guys, comment. No one watches, but a lot of people go back and watch the show. So make some comments. If you can't watch the show because I'm doing it in the middle of the day instead of late at night like I used to when I used to get 40, 50 people every time I did a show. Oh, there's one person. Hey there, one person. So one person, no, they left. Um, you know, what is the Constitution? Why do we have a Constitution? After the revolution, we didn't have a constitution for like 4 years. So why didn't we have one? Why didn't we have a constitution that we based our revolution on? We did have, the Declaration of Independence, which was a pretty good document. I think Jefferson was tripping on acid and smoking some good ganja when he wrote that, but because he's really a boring stuffed shirt. So, uh, or someone else wrote it, and he just took the credit. I mean, that's a very American exceptionalist kind of thing. I'm exceptionalist. I can steal anything I want. I can kill anybody I want. Like Donald Trump said, I could kill anyone on Broadway and get away with it. And, you look into what Donnie did for his 4 years, it's pretty friggin' amazing. He basically did the same thing. But the real amazing thing is that he was no different than Obama for 8 years. And Obama was no different from George H. Dickie Boy Cheney. Dick Cheney really was the guy in charge. Dick, the big Dick, Halliburton Dick, and, uh, transnational military industrial complex Rumsfeld were the two guys running that government. Not, Georgie Porgy was just, yeah, yeah, yeah. I used to do cocaine and now I paint. So, and then, we had Bill Clinton, probably did more damage to the American, way of life than the only person who even comes close to doing reprehensible, wrecking ball kind of presidency was Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson and Bill Clinton, though two nastiest mothers we've ever had for presidents. The other guys, and not so much. I mean, like, how many people remember anybody in between? Yeah, maybe Teddy Roosevelt because he really loved war. And the guy who went after the indigenous folk after the Civil War, and Lincoln, who tried. He wasn't like, oh, we got to get rid of slavery. No, he was. If keeping slavery would have kept the Union, we'd still be slaves. So, and we basically traded one kind of slavery for another. So that's where we're at. And here we are, 48 minutes and 23 seconds. The sun is starting to really shine on me. What time is it? 3:50, almost 4 o'clock. Um, yeah. How much juice do I still have left? 65%. Well, if anyone were to like comment, but I kind of covered a lot of stuff here, right? So come on, make some comments, more thumbs up, get more people to subscribe, um, you know, and probably have no idea the next time. Maybe Saturday, maybe Thursday, but I'm not. I'm $9 in the bank. So how about sending something to my PayPal, right? And that's the dudeawake42 at Gmail, dudeawake42 at Gmail. You want to talk to me? Hey, get a hold of me at dudeawake42 at Gmail. So let's see what we got. There's this guy. He's always fun. He's like my brother from another mother. Come on, sync up.
Sidelines for enabling the Russians, I'll call them the Russians, the Allied forces, if you prefer, to see large areas of the Bakhmut area, including the important suburb of Zaitsevo, where the Wagner Group is also apparently fighting. So, more advances, it seems, by the Wagner Group in Bakhmut. My own sense is that this is by far the most intense and important battle being fought at the moment. It seems that Ukrainian losses in this area are extremely high, and it seems also that there are again complaints from some of the Ukrainian units that have been committed to this battle, that they are all but forgotten by the authorities in Kiev, that they're sent to fight without proper equipment, ammunition, all those sort of things. There's a video circulating which looks like it's true of a unit in this particular area, Ukrainian unit in this particular area, addressing exactly that sort of complaint to President Zelensky. We've seen much of that over the course of the war. We've seen less of it recently, perhaps because the Ukrainians have had this morale uplift following the successful offensive in Kharkiv region, but it looks as if it's back. Anyway, further north still, there's intense fighting going on in northern Donetsk city around a town called Krasny Liman, formerly Liman, when it was controlled by the Ukrainians. The Russians, to the best of my memory, captured it in May without much resistance.
This is why I'm saying this war
it's now being
is
defended by various irregular Cossack units, though there is Russian artillery apparently operating, supporting these units, and there's been fighting around Liman or Krasny Liman underway for 2 weeks, with the Ukrainians trying to recapture this city, this town. Now, the leader of the Donetsk People's Republic, a man called Denis Pushilin, has said that the DPR militia is now offensive in this area. I'm not sure what that means. I'm not even sure that's true, but perhaps and plausibly there is some attempt being made to recapture, rather to support this garrison in Krasny Liman, which is under attack by the armed forces of Ukraine. And further north still, there is continued sporadic fighting around the Oskol River, with apparently the Ukrainians grudgingly accepting that they have not been able to successfully penetrate the Oskol River line, which the Russians have established. Now that, it seems to me, is a reasonable summary of the state of the fighting at the moment. As I said, the most important battle, in my opinion, up to this moment, is the battle for Bakhmut City. Everybody seems to agree if Bakhmut City falls, it'll mark a fundamental change in the dynamic of the war in Donbass. It will be the moment when one can start to say that the battle of Donbass, the battle of the Donbass arc of operations, as the Russians refer to it, is finally within sight of coming to an end. Anyway, that's where we are. I'm going to add one other little point, which I did find quite interesting, which is that, as I said in my previous program, it does look as if the Russians are now indeed importing large numbers of kamikaze drones from Iran. And interestingly, one of the targets for these drones will be HIMARS vehicles, not just the trucks, but presumably the track vehicles as well. There's apparently been some difficulty. The Russians have had some difficulty destroying the HIMARS vehicles, because apparently the time frame from launch of the missiles to the truck moving is very short, about 2 minutes. So the Ukrainian operators of these HIMARS can launch and scoot very effectively, and it's not always easy for the Russians to keep track on them. But the point is that these kamikaze drones, which operate in pairs apparently, can certainly outrun a HIMARS vehicle, and they can pursue it. And so we are now being given a rather strange vision of a HIMARS vehicle launching missiles scooting and then being chased and presumably eventually destroyed by Iranian-built Russian kamikaze drones. I have to.
Okay, let's see what else we got here. Now, time radio is more favorable to the Ukrainian guys, right? So they're always.
Putin wants to get the image of the leader of anti-Western bloc, and this is exactly what his summer.
So this guy is talking about: do European leaders think Putin's weak?
There's one story from outside the United Kingdom that quite properly has been making headlines even this week. It is the staggering Ukrainian counteroffensive that pushed Russian forces out of thousands of square miles of previously occupied territory. One of the biggest blows seems to have been to Russian morale and indeed to faith in President Putin. The war effort has been criticized on Russian state television in what was a pretty unprecedented shift against the war in public opinion in Russia.
So could that mean the mood is changing even in the corridors of the Kremlin? Well, Nikolai Petrov is a former advisor to the Russian parliament and senior research fellow on the Russia and Eurasia program at Chatham House, and he joins us now. Good morning.
Morning.
First off, have you got any sense of the mood inside Russia? Because we've been talking this morning about a potential change and a move against President Putin. Is that accurate?
I don't think so. There are certain shifts in public opinion. There are certain shifts within elites, but it's too early to speak about any radical changes which are already taking place.
So there's no move to remove him then? Because there had been some suggestions during the week that potentially, members of his own party were getting a little bit fed up with the fact that the Russian military is not making as much progress, had been pushed back inside Ukraine, and there is a renewed effort, if you like, from the West to make sure that Ukraine has everything that it needs to keep pushing forward.
I would say that we can describe the political landscape in Russia as composed by two basic parties. It's not a kind of formal political parties. One of them is a party of moderate war supporters, and Putin belongs to them. And another one is of crazy war supporters, and this is exactly who are criticizing Putin for being not very effective, for not bombing Greef, for not bombing Western countries, and so on. So far, Putin looks like, not being in the middle, but being part of more or less moderate supporters of the war. And there is certain criticism, but we cannot speak about Putin's political party, which is criticizing him. There is a kind of political desert in Russia, so there are no political elites in terms of persons who can speak loudly without being afraid to be punished or put into the jail. And we do see certain very slight attempts of low-level public persons, like say municipal deputies, to say something criticizing Putin's war.
And just finally, he did meet President Putin, met with President Xi earlier in the week, and he'd acknowledged that Xi had concerns about the war. What do you make of that? That feels like quite a moment.
I think it's very important to understand that the military failure in northern Ukraine is pretty harmful for Putin, not only domestically but internationally. Putin wants to get the image of the leader of anti-Western bloc, and this is exactly what his Samarkand talks with different leaders, including Xi Jinping, including Erdogan, were about. But what we can see is pretty, I would say neutral, but with certain signs of negative reaction from the side of both Chinese and Indian leader to what is going on. That's why Putin needs to demonstrate them that he is not that weak as he looks now.
Nikolai Petrov, thank you for joining us and taking us through that fascinating stuff.
Okay. So those, I will look at everybody, right?
For just 67
$7.
And I don't believe in anybody.
Videos as you want, and
Right.
you never need to pick up a camera or use any fancy editing software.
Russia frustrated with NATO.
Russia, at least on the field of battle, don't appear to have an awful lot to offer. You know, they ground a halt in the east, and we know all the difficulties they're having at a strategic level, and they just don't appear to have any options at their disposal at the moment.
And time then to invite you into our daily briefing room with one of our leading tactical and strategic minds with years of experience high in military command shares insights on the war in Ukraine. Let's welcome Major General Rupert Jones, former Standing Joint Forces Commander. Rupert, good afternoon to you.
Hey, John, very nice to see you again.
Always good to have you here, Rupert. First of all, can I just get your take on the latest state of the war in Ukraine?
Well, I mean, all the talk is quite honestly about the Ukrainian offensive in the south, and and that will take time to play out. We should all be patient about that. The signs are encouraging, aren't they? The Ukrainians have done good work to prepare the ground for that offensive, and they appear to be making steady headway. But they'll be cautious with it. So I think that's interesting. There's a sense that they're looking to mount advances in the north as well. And I think what this all amounts to is the Ukrainians trying to make the best use of the final months, if you like, before the real winter sets in. I suppose the only other thing I'll observe is that it therefore feels that it's Ukraine who are making all the plays. Russia, at least on the field of battle, don't appear to have an awful lot to offer at the moment. They ground a halt in the east, and we know all the difficulties they're having at a strategic level, and they just don't appear to have any options at their disposal at the moment.
I was talking earlier in the week to a Ukrainian politician who was making the point that they are really doing the very best they can on this very important frontier around Kherson, but worried about the supply of munitions. It is the job of a Ukrainian politician to make the point and try and keep the pressure on Western allies to keep the supply of weapons and ammunition going. Are you concerned at all? Is there reason to be worried about the forces of Ukraine on that important front line, and what could be a turning point in the war, running out of vital?
He points to two really important things. I mean, firstly, it is right and proper that he makes that case from a Ukrainian perspective to keep the pressure on NATO and Ukraine's other allies. I think that is right and proper to do. But there is a behind that, he's also right. No Western military holds as many stocks of munitions as we would like, because they're very, very costly to hold. And we're talking about urban warfare. And my experience of urban warfare is it is very, very costly in a whole range of things, not least in munitions. So, the global coalition fighting in Mosul and Raqqa, we had to ration our use of munitions, particularly the smart munitions, because urban warfare eats them up so very much. So he's absolutely right to make the case.
Then get unlimited sales leads, mailing lists, email lists, even free CRM. We offer a free trial, no credit card required.
Case, and it is a concern.
I was very interested, Rupert, to read earlier in the week about the capacity of Ukrainian forces to exercise their imagination and powers of improvisation, the way that they are putting equipment, sometimes low-cost equipment, to incredibly good use. By mounting missiles on the backs of trucks, for example, by using drones, adapting low-cost drones to drop munitions onto.
World leaders have begun assembling in New York for the annual United Nations General Assembly. Among the leaders who sit at the crossroads of many very much. For talking with us. I want to begin with the war in Ukraine, where, as you know, people are dying still every day. You've shown support for both sides, Russia and Ukraine. Possible. How do you see it end, and how quickly?
It will Most importantly, Russian attitude will be very, very important here. In Uzbekistan, I got together with President Putin and we had very extensive discussions with him, and he is actually showing me that he's willing to end this as soon as possible. That was my impression, because the way things are going right now are quite problematic. 200 hostages will be exchanged upon an agreement between the parties. I think a significant step will be taken forward.
Should Russia be permitted to keep some of the territory it's taken from Ukraine since it invaded in February? Should that be part of a solution to this conflict?
No, and undoubtedly no. When we talk about reciprocal agreement, this is what we mean. If a peace is going to be established in Ukraine, of course the returning of the land that was invaded will be expected. This is what is wanted. Mr. Putin has taken Ukraine.
Should Russia Crimea?
Since 2014, we have been talking to Putin about this, and this is what we have requested from him. We asked him to turn Crimea to its rightful owners. These are our descendants at the same time, the people who are living there. This step forward, if you could leave us, you would also be relieving the Crimean Tatars and Ukraine as well.
Switch and save $50. It's okay. There's enough for everyone.
Hurry into Consome Plus. We've got hundreds of items in stock on the floor.
Countries close to Iran are purchasing this ammunition, probably Pakistan or other countries in the region. And then those countries are selling the ammunition on the black market, which the West is purchasing and then sending to Ukraine directly. War is a big business, and everyone is looking to make some profits. Here's some footage of the Ukrainian forces destroying another Russian T-80 tank by using drones. The tank was abandoned by the Russians. Also, another Russian 152mm SPG was abandoned in the streets of Izium, and now it is in Ukrainian hands. The Ukrainians were able to capture 2 more T-72s and a T-80 in the Kharkiv region. Also, these drones that are able to drop grenades are very effective. Here's Ukraine using them to destroy another Russian BMD. According to satellite images, the Ukrainian forces were able to destroy a Russian base in the town of Novor Aidar. Here's some footage that shows Ukrainian forces versus Russian forces in urban warfare.
In Batsu's seminal book on the art of war, he starts off saying that there is no winner in war. War is not a winnable situation. But if you have to fight a war, this is how to do it, right? And the Ukraine military is fighting more like Latsu talks about, utilization of your resources in the most viable way, and not to overuse your firepower, because all you're doing is wasting it and causing a deficiency in your own army. And so, I mean, that's, like I said, the real interesting thing is going to happen in the next few weeks, in that Russia is going to have this election in the 1/5 of the Ukraine that they still hold, and they're going to declare that part of Russia. And then and there are a lot of Ukrainian military assets there, and they're going to say, "Oh, Ukraine is attacking Russia. We have to," and they'll declare war on Ukraine and mobilize the whole country of Russia to be at war. And that won't do them any good for the next 6 months because they got to throw at it, right? And so that means they have to take all of their resources and put it towards war. And that won't really do anything until 6 months from now. And by that, who knows what's going to happen. But What they do have is strategic weapons at hand, right? They're running out of tanks. They're running out of artillery. They're running out of bullets, right? They're running out of soldiers, right? And to get any more, it's going to take them 6 months to get a usable large source of that, right? And they're running out of money. They started this with something like $600 billion in their reserves. Now, half of that was in U.S. Western banks making interest, and then that got frozen, so they were stuck with 300 billion, and they are down to close to somewhere between 120 and 40 billion dollars. And they run out of that, they'll have no money to pay anybody to work, anybody to fight, anybody to do anything, right? So how long, if they have run through $600 billion in 7 months, where are they going to be in 6 months, right? And that means they're going to have to spend like 20 times more than they have in the last 7 months, because all they were doing taking stuff off the shelf. Now they have to make it or buy it or get it from someplace else. Whereas NATO and the West have a big, they can get it. All those countries have their own military industrial complex. Germany, Sweden, all those guys are happy to sell weapons, because basically NATO's paying for it. All the countries are paying for it. And it'll be interesting to see what happens this winter. Now, they actually have enough NATO, EU, if everyone shared, they got enough energy to get through it. Yeah, they'll have to turn down their thermostats. Yes, a number of people have to wait. Won't be. Have to take a workman's holiday. Things of the nature that occurred during the shuttering of the Western world for COVID. It'll be similar to that, but not as much, right? So we 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 13 seconds. Nobody's watching. There's 2 thumbs up. 48 percent left of the juice. So anyway, I am focusing on how to be happy, and the best way to be happy is to help somebody else. Your life is not about you. It's about the we in me, right? The other thing is, if you should read Carl Jung's work on the shadow. Everyone doesn't want to show their shadow, and no one wants to show grief or sadness. That's a sign of weakness. No, it isn't. When you can show your grief, you can basically show that you're strong, right? And with my parents, had nothing to do with my family until I was 32, right? Yeah, I saw them on holidays, blah blah blah. But not like my brothers all my brothers and sisters work for my parents, so they were like um, y- collared, you know, and it affected them. And all the shit that my father did and my mother did when we were kids, they weren't compared to other people. They didn't beat us, they didn't torture us, but mentally, it was, my father was Italian and had a quick temper. I got hypoglycemia, so when his blood sugar dropped, he could really lose his, he wouldn't be the logical guy he was, and he was spent a good deal of his career as a colonel in the Air Force, developing ways to incinerate the world. So he had a lot of PTSD. His experience, when he was in the European theater, he sent over 60,000 men to their death. He and McNamara were the strategists, strategists, and my father was the guy who got everyone in line to do you know the mission. And so he's and the beginning he was there doing the debriefing. After about a couple of weeks of that, he couldn't do it anymore. So he just read the numbers at the bottom of the page. But even that affected him, because he would send people off and 20,000 wouldn't come back. I mean, per capita, the U.S. Air Force lost more people than any other arm of the government. The Army had 7 million guys out there in the field per capita, right? So they lost millions. And I mean, the Marines lost something like 40,000 guys in 3 weeks when they went to take Okinawa, which was like the invade. That was one of the islands just off of Japan, and so you know it was. I mean, that's more. In less than 2 months, that's more Marines than died in than all the U.S. soldiers died in Vietnam, right? So, and then another almost 100,000 were mortally, really seriously wounded, blinded, lost limbs, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, when you can appreciate grief, right? And so I took care of my parents the last, from 32 until they died, right? So that was another 28 years, I was like in my 60s when they died, or late 50s. And I made it, I said, when my dad, oh, you have to, because he had burnt the bridge with all my other brothers and sisters. And so, he came to, you have to take care of us. I said, no, I don't, screw you, fuck off. And, I have my own life. You never really helped me out. You have bribed all of my brothers and sisters to work for you because he paid them really well. He just, had his foot on their neck for 40 years, right? Me, I was off doing whatever the heck I wanted to do, right? So, he bought them cars and houses and put their kids through college and blah blah blah. Well, I didn't have any kids. Anyway, so when I decided to take care of my parents, I said, "Okay, I'll take care of you, but you got to do it on my, how I want it done." And he, what are you talking about? I said, "Well, I'll be there, um, but only when you are your best self. You're not really the asshole that all my brothers and sisters say you are. You can be, but as long as you're not doing that when I'm around, we can have a good time. You are fun people. You are smart people. You are interesting and we engaged kind of folks. So we can have a interesting time as long as you got. And I'm going to do it. My ulterior motive is that I want to talk to you about who you are. What you are, because it reflects who I am. And so I did. And I spent those almost 30 years, 28 years doing that, having a good time with them, talking to them, having them read what I was writing, reading books together, all the above, right? And so when they died, I said everything everyone said. I had nothing to. I wish I could. I made sure in the 28 years, I made sure that if I make any other mistakes, I'm not going to make it. I already kind of had said everything, experienced everything, and when the Queen of England, they're going through this whole blah blah blah. So when my mom died, right, um, and it took her like 4 years to die. She died, and she like rallied, came back home, died again, rallied, died, rallied, and I was always there with her. My father, not so much. He couldn't, he wouldn't, he just thought about his own angst. He didn't think about anything else. Right? Me, I thought about everybody else because I knew that would be the vehicle for me to grow. Right. So when my mom, that last, she died. It took her 4 days to kind of die. So she's at home. We have, I've gotten people to take care of her, and this is one black lady, Timothy, who was really great. Right. She and my mom, they were on the same. Meaning, my mom was a night person. So Timothy and my mom would, stay up, bake cookies, play cards, right? Drink tea and a little schnapps and eat baked goods and have a good and play cards, right? And then my mom would sleep, go to bed around 4 in the morning, sleep until around 11. Timothy would leave around 10. The other lady would come in and clean up and get ready for my mom to wake up around noon and have lunch for her. My dad would do whatever he did. And and that was for about 4 years, from the point my mom died the first time, right? So when I was there, because I wasn't there 24/7, I was just there when it was the right time to be there, and I knew that, right? And so I had a business. I was a consultant. I was working for the corporate world, but only 11 weeks of the year, right? So the other, 52, 11. So the other 38, I was doing other stuff, involved in all kinds of social things and cultural things. And I had a place down in the Florida Keys, and I had a place in Stewart, which was about 25 miles from where my parents lived. And my dad could never find the place, right? I gave him the address, he could never find it, right? Because it's hard to explain Stewart. It's a very interesting, it's like old, really wealthy, Gilded Age wealth, and then kind of fell into, and it's just, as far as the coastline goes, it's just down the coast from Palm Beach, right? And by road, maybe 20 miles, but by boat, on the intercoastal, 5 miles, right? And there's two little fishing villages between Palm Beach and Stewart, and there is Port St. Lucie on the other side. There's a nuclear power plant called Turkey Point, and a shit factory. Where that whole east, about 20, 40 miles of the coast of Florida, Boynton Beach, places like that, all the shit gets processed and then pushed into the intercoastal, and that's why they have really super bad um, you know, algae blooms, along with all the farming and the cows and the pigs. Um, so, and I had been there 20 years, so I had tons of friends and people there. Boynton Beach had a big time New Age crew, and a lot of those people I knew from New York, from the Green Door, which was a place on Spring Street that this really rich guy and a bunch of us who were, I had a buddy of mine who published a thing called the Whole Life Times and a Whole Life Expo, and that was like a new age, without being a new agey kind of thing. It's about diet and supplements and exercise and stuff like that. And that was in the 70s and 80s that it really thrived, and I don't know what it's doing now. So that was, and then there was, the Theological Society, Madame Blavatsky's. I was part of that. The Thule Society, which was, those guys, and there was another, not Scordace, which is like the Thule Society, but way more weird, and very, very, very deep into the things that go bump in the night, and having technology that went bump in the night. And the Schooler Group, the guys who were the DARPA of the Nazis, the guys who invented the Glocke and the German nuclear weapons and other things that they were doing. And if you ever go watch the movie Hellboy, that first one, very good. That's what they were doing. So I had my thumb in all of that because I had gone from Cooper Union in the Alternative Technology Department into helping start a NGO in the UN, um, um, trying to front alternative technologies. And we were doing a great job, and we were getting it out there into the world through UNICEF. UNICEF is almost a separate entity from the UN, and they actually do a pretty good job. The rest of the UN, not so much. It's like Hail Hydra. The UN is Hail Hydra. And so, and that's why everyone is reading the script, because the script comes, is printed at the UN and disseminated through the General Assembly and the Security Council and the other councils that are there that don't do anything except cause chaos and stupidity. And I would work there for 2 years and saw it firsthand. And then came back in the 80s, doing interesting one-offs there, right? Because I still had friends who were running NGOs, and I'd say, "Hey, let's do this." They would front it. We'd do it. We did a conference on alternative technologies in the '80s when the internet was, the World Wide Web was just getting to go. There were no platforms. We made a platform and did a worldwide conference on alternative technologies, basically zero point energy, which was called cold fusion, and which wasn't cold fusion, and and they gave that name so they could discredit it, right? To say that it was a tap between multiple dimensions, that went too far. So we'll call it cold fusion. So, um, and so I was right in the middle of all that stuff. And so people call me, the Forrest Gump of of all of this. And no, what I was in the movie of Forrest Gump, the first frame is they doing a crane shot of Forrest's mom's house, which was an old, plantation house with the big white columns, a big house that that's all she had left of her generations. And she's a nice person, so she's nice. And most of the people working for her, black people, they're more her friends than servants, and more her family than friends, right? So, and the movie opens up, and you see this bucolic, Alabama, moss on the trees and the white columns, and then it's really quiet, and a feather kind of blows into the frame, and it's doing this. Then you hear smack, right, and that's Forrest, right, and then the camera dollies past the feather, into the upper window, into the bedroom, and there is Forrest being, all the black mamas around smiling, and Forrest mama is going through hell to give birth to Forrest, and then the movie goes on, and Forrest is always right. He knows, without knowing, he's always stepping on his 20. Without knowing, he knows his 360. Only way he survived that scene in Vietnam where he saved all his buddies looking for his best friend who dies in his arms, and he gets to the Medal of, honor. He wasn't thinking about any of that, right? He just consciously knew his 360, and he knew he had to say Bubba. And that's my nickname, my twin flame. She called me Bubba. So anyway, there's other people used to call me Balto, dog boy, from what's his name, who told all the stories about up there in Alaska with the dogs. So I've had this amazing presence and grace that I didn't even understand to observe the world around me. And I had all these great teachers and mentors who were sculpting me to be what they wanted me to be without me understanding any of that. So I just went merrily along my way from one to the next, 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 to the next. And I was always stepping on my 20 and always, having a 360 protecting me. But here I am in my 70s, and I'm out in heaven and living on $9, in my checking account, and it's still okay, right? And so I had a really interesting dream last night about all of this, right? And it was a dream about what Carl Jung says about the shadow, right? And you should go listen to Gil Scott Heron's song about that. Someone has sent me a message. Oh, it's just a stupid little whatchamacallit. Mm. So my someone or something or my stupidity took over my messaging on my phone here, and it only sends messages at 6 o'clock at night when I have no access to the internet or a phone signal. I'm up on top of a hill. I have 1/10 of a bar, and I'm trying to send a message, and it says nope, can't send it till 6 p.m. because I've told it to only send messages at 6 p.m. So let's try this. Have you received any of my messages? My stupid phone says it's only sending them at 6 p.m. when I don't have any access to send anything because I have no access to my um, my service. So, are you getting this message? No, it's a scheduled message, right? So I'm sending you a message, seeing if this gets to you. Does it get to you? Is it getting to you? Schedule message. Well, so that's pretty much it. My access and understanding of this digital world is less and less, right? 'Cause back in the day, I had all these friends who knew how to use everything, and I never had to play with it, never had to learn myself, right? So anyway, um, the show's been an hour and a half, give or take. There's nobody there to make. No one's said anything. It's a live chat, and I don't know when I'll do the next one, right? So I've looked at, my channel has, more almost 2,000 of these shows. There's some really good ones, you know. And what I did last night, when I had access, I just kind of went to my channel, went to my videos, and they were all there. And I just kind of would take my finger and go whoop, and they go boop, 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 like a roulette wheel, boop, 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 and stop on a show. I'd hit it. I'd watch the first 5 seconds if that was interesting. I'd put my little finger on the cursor down below my picture and just kind of move my finger along that 1 hour show or 2 hour show or 5 hour show and just kind of see myself and I'd stop every now and then and see what I was saying. And some of it was pretty amazing. Right? And the titles to the shows kind of go to what I was talking about. So they're all shamanic, they're all energetic. If you watch them, it'll change your life. You don't, it won't. And you'll be stuck in the piece of shit that you are. And that's, what it is. That's what life is about. Are you going to wake up or are you just going to be a piece of shit, you know? And if you're a piece of shit, well, how's that doing for you? How you doing? How you doing being a piece of shit? Now, whether you have a lot of money or you're dirt poor, doesn't matter. I've had both. And during all of my life, I have not been a piece of shit. Now, I've been stupid. I've been a moron. Every day I'm 40% moron because, I'm not being consciously aware. I am all the frigging time. A good deal of the time I am. Something I'm doing real good, maybe 80% of the time. Right? And usually when I'm a moron, I'm not doing anything. So it doesn't really, affect anything. It's not like I'm driving as a moron or I'm trying to fix something as a moron, those time I'm being conscious aware, right? I was driving this car, man. I have to really be conscious aware one day, woo, and that'll be the end of me. Which, I am only leaving the building, the premises, the stage, um, when Love's co-creation has said, "Okay, you can come home, buddy. You've done your 11%." Right, and so that was my dream last night. I basically met up with a kind of what was that movie? Deadpool, right? The second or third one where the little kid had the power to like really see, and Deadpool's trying to reach out to him and be nice. And the kid who could be really nasty went to a school where everybody was kind of nasty, and there was a guy who had a big, I think he was known as Blockhead, was there. So I was dealing with some people, and Blockhead stepped onto the stage and he was about to kill everyone. And I just kind of, stepped in between everyone and Blockhead and said, "So, hey, what's up?" And we started talking, and Blockhead was all right. He just wanted someone to listen. So I listened, right? asked an interesting or two question here and there, and Blockhead said, you're all right. I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to kill everybody else. I said, why do that? It's not a waste of time. Wouldn't it be better if we went some fishing? Do ever what do you want to do? You want to kill everyone, or what do you really want to do? So Blockhead was like, I don't know. I said, so why don't we go someplace nice and think about what you really want to do rather than staying here and all these buildings are on fire and all this destruction and the crazy kid. Yeah, but should we leave the crazy kid? No, let's take the crazy kid with us. So we did. And again, I went in front of him and him instead of like, you know, like I said, no, no, he's our friend. We should talk. I've listened to him, listen to him. So I did. And the kid said, I said, with my help, you could kill everyone in the most pleasurable way. But with my help, you might realize you don't want to do that. So it's a win-win for you. So we you've destroyed a good deal of the movie set here. Why don't we go stage left to where it's kind of nice, sit by the stream, eat yummy things, and talk things out, which we did, right? And so we talked and we talked and we talked, and we got, we illuminated all of their dark shadows, right? And so they were ready to go into being their better self. I said, okay, so, you know, we have a choice here. We could just stay here and be our better self and not have to deal with all of those folk, right? Because they're not going to be as in a good enough shape to be their better self. You've left them in a bed, and they're going to be scared of you, and they want to attack you, and you show any kind of weakness, they'll take advantage of it. Why don't you let me go talk to them, right? So I went and talked to the folk, and they were not going to let go of wanting to kill those two. They wanted to kill the kid and Blockhead. We had to kill them. We let them live. They'll come back and. And I said, no, no, no. If you're nice to them, they'll be nice to you. And didn't do it, right? No matter how. So I annoyed them, and so they freaking killed me. The people who are considered, they're good. They're the Americans. They're NATO. They're the English and the Queen and blah blah. And oh man, I had to think about the Queen. And basically she's just she's not even a reptile. She's a virus or a you know one of those things that get into your body and take advantage of your body, and just they don't kill you, but they do nasty things to you. Parasite. Yeah, the Queen was, she's parasite. And that little girl, parasite got in a little girl, and she, was what the Queen was for 70 years plus. And Charlie Boy, he had to murder the Queen and have sex, rape and murder the Queen. He's 90 something years old, and then the parasite got into him up his penis. So this, hey, don't believe a word I say. This is my dream. What can I say, right? And so basically, that parasite had, because of how it could transmute itself over the TV waves, all of this boo hoo hoo over the Queen has infected a good portion of the human populace to the point where it's going to want to just kill, maim, and destroy no matter what, in the name of being, the righteous people. Again, this is just my dream. What can I say? That's why this show is called Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei Al Bob. So there I was having this dream, and basically, this is that parasite tried to get inside of me and nibble on me and couldn't because I was protected by love's co-creation. So I got very, very upset and said, well, go back to those guys and just, bring them here so we can start World War III. I said, no. And then it started to torture me. And I just said, forget about it. They tortured me more. They couldn't get inside of me and take control of me, but they could torture me. And I was just saying, screw you, right? And that's when Blockhead and the kid showed up and basically messed everyone up. And kind of, I died in their hands, right? And I said, okay, you revenged this, but now go back to that nice place and stay there. You see, you can't come back here. So don't be the object of their ability to mess up everything, right? You can be at ease. You can be at peace. You can be, the new take my Garland and be the new lucky bastards, because these guys are going to mess the whole shit up, and you guys can step in and help those who are left who want to start, um, a better world, right? And so that's and so in that process, they're there. I'm dying. Deadpool is there. All those guys are there. They're crying. Everyone's messed up, and I'm and so this big light comes around, and my masters come and said, "Okay, you've done your 11%. Come on, welcome home." So that was last night's dream. So I don't think I'm going to have to do all of that. I just have to be consciously aware and consciously intent of my 20 and my 360 and do my best. Not be perfect, do my best. And so the last few weeks have been a test because I've basically stepped into these communities and led by example. And they're very like, whoa. And it's kind of shook them up a little bit to do their best. But they are at a point where they're like, I'm scared to do my best because if I step up to this, I know I'll just get disappointed and then it'll be worse. And so that's what I'm dealing with right now, right? With the communities around me is that no one's willing to do any better than what they were, and they're miserable where they are. And when I was interacting with them, they were like seeing the potential that they could be their best. They could step up, they could do all that. But the system itself, the Tennessee education system, the Tennessee medical system, the Tennessee economic system wants these people to be, serfs, slaves, and die in the most miserable way because they service that parasite. They represent the parasite world, right? So that's kind of where we're at. It's 4:44. I love it when it does that. There's nobody watching. 2 thumbs up, no real comments. So come on, leave some comments. About 20 or 30 of you are going to watch this between now and next time I do another one. And who knows when that's going to be? It's going to be at least, I would say Thursday would be the earliest. Maybe tomorrow, but maybe not. Because like I said, I got $9 in my checking account. So every time I move my car, even if it's just a mile, it's a little bit of gas, and it's because it's a pretty crappy road. I really have to watch out. It's a little bit of gas, and it's because it's a pretty crappy road. I really have to watch out for my pony. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that show. I gave you a plethora of lots of things to think about, and I hope you do. So, okay, let's see. Click off here, and then click over here.